This video is made to make it easier for you to fall asleep. You can put down your phone, close your eyes and fall asleep. And I'll tell the story. Welcome to my channel. I remember that evening as clearly as if it happened yesterday. It was early June. The day was warm but not hot, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming linden trees. The sun was slowly sinking behind the rooftops, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. I was walking home along a quiet street, listening to the distant sounds of the city and feeling as if the summer evening was wrapping me in a gentle blanket. Suddenly I heard footsteps behind me. They were unhurried, and for some reason their rhythm made me feel calm. I turned and saw a tall man with dark hair. He was holding a thick book in his hands, and when he noticed me looking at him, he gave a small smile. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Could you tell me where the library is?" I showed him the way, and we walked together. At first, we only talked about books. He told me he had recently moved to our cities, that he enjoyed walking and finding new places. His voice was steady, but there was a touch of sadness in it, as if behind his words there was a story he was not yet ready to tell. When we reached the library, he looked at me and suddenly suggested, "Maybe tomorrow you could show me the city?" Something stirred in my chest. It was a feeling where joy and light, nervousness mixed together. I nodded, unable to find the right words. The next day we met at the old fountain in the center. He brought coffee in paper cups and I brought small pies. We sat on a bench, talking and laughing. Time seemed to pass unnoticed, and the city around us felt different. Quieter, softer, as if it had changed only because we were together. We wandered through narrow streets, went into small shops, and looked at the river. Sometimes we went silent and stared into the distance for a long time. I wanted to ask what he was thinking, but I was afraid to break the spatial silence. In the evening, he walked at home. When we stopped at my door, he said, "It was a good day, thank you." I smiled, but in my heart, I felt a light, almost invisible worry, as if I already know that this was too fragile to last forever. A week has passed since our first walk. We met almost every day. Sometimes we had coffee on the bench by the fountain. Sometimes we just walked along the river. It felt like time had changed, longer, softer, as if each day lasted a little more than usual. I learned about him little by little. He told me he used to live in a big city, but he got tired of the noise and the people always in a hurry. Here, he said, time flows differently. I listened and thought he was right. With him, I felt slowing down too. Sometimes he was cheerful, making jokes, and a little comments that made me laugh. But sometimes he became quiet, as if his thoughts were far away. In these moments, he would just look at the water, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold. "You're hiding something," I said once. He looked at me and smiled, but there was more sadness than joy in that smile. "Everyone has their own story," he replied. "Sometimes it is better to tell it later." After that, he changed the subject. I didn't push him, but inside, I felt there was something important behind his silence. One evening, we sat by the river. The water moved softly, and the sunset painted everything warm colors. He said, "Sometimes I think that everything in life is temporary. Places, people, even feelings." I wanted to argue, to say there are things that stay, but the words stayed in my throat. Instead, I just took his hand. He squeezed my fingers gently. In that moment, I felt he had grown closer, but along with it came a quiet fear, the fear that one day he would not be there. Autumn came quietly. His leaves started turning yellow, and the evenings grew cooler. We still met often, but something in him began to change. Sometimes he would disappear for several days without answering my messages, then return with a smile as if nothing had happened. I tried not to ask too many questions, but inside my worry was growing. One day, when we were sitting in a small cafe near the station, I felt again that his thoughts were far away. "You somewhere else again," I said softly. He looked at me as if he wanted to say something, then lowered his eyes. "Sorry, sometimes I think about things I cannot change." We fell silent. I looked at him and realized I wanted to know the truth more and more, even if I wouldn't like it. A few days later, he invited me for an evening walk. We walked through the park and the fallen leaves rustled softly under our feet. The sky was deep blue with bright stars above. He didn't say much, but suddenly he stopped and asked, "If someone disappears from your life, would you be angry or would you simply forget?" The question caught me off guard. "I can't forget," I said. "If someone matters, they stay in my heart." He nodded, but there was such sadness in his eyes that it scared me. That night I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. I felt something was coming and that something could change everything. October brought rain and cold wind. Our meetings became less frequent, but each one felt special. I began to value even the silence between us. It felt warm like a blanket on a chilly evening. One day he came to me without warning. His coat was wet and his hair stuck to his forehead. I opened the door and he hugged me immediately as if afraid I might disappear. "What happened?" I asked, feeling his arms trembling. "Nothing. Just, can I stay here for a while? He spoke quietly, almost in a whisper. We sat in the kitchen drinking tea. He started as a steam rising from his cups for a long time, then suddenly said, "Have you ever felt that time runs too fast?" "Yes," I answered, "especially when I'm happy." He nodded and sighed. Then, "Just remember that I never wanted to hurt you." I wanted to ask what he meant, but he looked away. There was moisture in his eyes. There was a moisture in his eyes, and for the first time I thought he might be crying. That night, when he fell asleep beside me, I watched his face in the dim light from the street lamp. It seemed like he was whispering something in his sleep. I couldn't understand the words, but there was so much pain in his voice that my heart tightened. In that moment, I understood. He carried something inside him that would sooner or later destroy our world. November was grey. The days grew shorter, and it seemed even the air around us had gone quiet. We saw each other rarely. His messages became short, and something he disappeared for days. I tried not to ask too many questions, but the worry stayed with me. One evening he finally came. In his hands was a small box wrapped in paper. He sat across from me, placed it on the table, and stayed silent for a long time. "This is for you," he said at last. Inside was a necklace with a tiny star-shaped pendant. "So you remember," he added softly. I was to ask, "Remember that?" "Remember what?" But he spoke first. "I'll have to leave soon, and I won't be coming back." My heart pounded so hard, and I could barely breathe. "Why?" My voice shook. He looked away. "I'm sick. It's too fast. The doctors don't give me much time." The world seemed to shrink into a single moment. I wanted to scream, to argue, but in his eyes I saw too much tiredness and acceptance that words froze in my heart. We sat together while snow fell outside. He held my hand and whispered, "When I'm gone, look at the stars. I'll be there." The last weeks we spent together without talking about the future. We simply lived, drinking morning tea, walking down empty streets, laughing at silly jokes. And in every look he gave me, there was a goodbye. The day he left, I didn't cry. I just watched the first spring light through the window. The star shone on my neck, and I knew he had kept his promise.